welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with Dylan to answer some of your questions about composting toilets. Recently I put a post on Facebook asking what questions you want answers to, and I'm here with the best person to answer them, and I'll answer some based on personal experiences. So one of the first questions we have is, how often do you need to empty them? Now I believe that would be dependent on which type of toilet you have.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So on the side of the most basic systems, the average and ideal period should be around about 2 weeks. And that's just to maintain convenience. Any system that you have to service less than 2 weeks potentially won't be considered a little bit more inconvenient to live with.
Yeah.
So that's what we consider our optimum minimum period, and of course with larger and various different systems, the maintenance period can extend out to 7-week intervals and then out to 1 year intervals.
Wow, there's systems that go right to 1 year?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that. Ours is actually like a 2 to 3 week that we have to change it. If we are having to change it every week, that would be a hassle between two of us. 2 to 3 weeks comes around quite fast, but if it was every week, it'd just be too much. So if we just had a classic bucket system, that would probably last around a week, would it?
Up to a week, yeah.
Up to a week, because you need more adequate covering material, so it fills up faster and you have to empty it more often.
Correct.
So if you're like a single person, it might not be as bad, but if you're a couple...
I do advocate the bucket systems for 1 to 2 people, so therefore I put the emphasis on the 1. Obviously it can be convenient enough for 2 people, but in the instances a bucket system is used for 3 people, it's preferable that you have additional bucket systems, or fixtures that is.
Oh yeah.
And I believe that the bucket systems have a remarkable value that is not always considered, and that is they're a personal toilet potentially, and therefore we individually can take responsibility for our waste on an individual level.
Yeah, cool. Next question we have is, how much do they smell?
Well, none, if used appropriately and that everything is operating well. And of course, when a composting system happens to be misused, it's easily rectified. There is no complicated technicians to come in and sort them out. Often it just requires a simple call and a little bit of orientation from me, and you'll be back on track.
The really cool thing is, I was really skeptical about the compost toilet system. I thought that it was going to smell really bad. I did a bit of research and was sort of reassured by people saying that it doesn't smell, but I didn't quite believe them. But when we got the compost toilet, I found that it smelled less than a normal toilet. So Jay can go in, do his business, and instead of walking in and being like, oh, you know, standard husband stuff. Anyway, I can walk in and I can't even smell it. It's really good. We've got the Scene 2, it's got a fan that sucks a little bit of smell out as well, but if it's done correctly, it shouldn't smell.
And that's some protection system.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes you can set them up so that when passive, but of course a fan is much more reliable. Now, and on that note, essentially a composting system, because it's actively drawing draft down past you whilst you're using it, it means you typically can't smell yourself, nor can you smell the previous occupant. Yeah. So no more Blake hands.
That's really good. Honestly, yeah, we don't use any sprays anymore at all because there's just no smell, it just gets sucked out. The one thing I would mention is that the pipe that comes out, I wouldn't put it next to your loft window. It was a fail. That was a massive fail, don't do that.
So design considerations to be explored when you set up your ventilation system.
Exactly. Alright, does the compost bin smell?
Well, if it's a chamber system, you may experience a small degree of odour when you're maintaining it, but of course it's put aside and allowed to decompose typically in a chamber for a duration of time. And of course chamber systems, unless you've got a series of chambers, you need to empty them out at some point so that they can go into a composting bin for maturation, aging to a year. So once it's put aside and matured for a short period of time, it snaps up pretty much all of its odour, and therefore you can remove it into the bin, and that's very much an odourless experience as well.
So from our personal experience, again, we thought that it was going to be disgusting. In all honesty, we thought it was going to be gross. So we put our compost bin on the right opposite end of the paddock because we thought, oh, it's going to be gross. But we've got composting buckets, so we just put a lid on it, put it aside for a few weeks. After it's sat for a few weeks, then we put it into the compost bin, and there was next to no smell again. If you just emptied it straight into the compost bin, yeah, that's when you would get a bit of smell, but when you let it sit inside the bucket or whatever system for a few weeks before transferring it to main compost, it doesn't smell.
Keeping in mind, we're talking about some of the most simple composting systems. There's a lot more technology on the market, such as we have Ecolite and Sunmar systems, and they have come in non-heated and heated versions, and the heated versions generate a thermophilic compost, which is very aggressive at treating the waste and also eliminating odour. So they have removal trays, and of course the product that comes out of them is odourless, probably more along the lines of humus and such, so it's a soily smell. So it really depends on the nature of your technology, and that sometimes when we're exploring a composting toilet system with a customer, we want to understand what is their preference for maintenance and use.
And obviously that would depict across the price. Alright, cool. So I've got a question. Can you process the compost on your own land?
That's correct. With different types of composting systems, we're working on improving the definitions as to how the waste is treated. So the waste out of a compost system, we would prefer that people consider it a resource, but it just depends on the type of composting system. So a large clad smoltron, it'll be definitely a resource good to use immediately. Smaller systems, you need to go into a secondary treatment, at which point then it becomes a resource because we've allowed it the time to achieve composting.
Next question. How do you negotiate for your boyfriend to empty all the time? Well, with us, we try and negotiate to take turns at doing it. It doesn't always work out well, or otherwise bribe him. That's all I can say. Bribe him with something to do it all the time, or he would just be awesome and do it anyway. Get a composting system that you don't have to empty frequently. That will save the argument as well.
That's interesting in some respects. Why I would say that a bucket system has a certain advantage if it's a personal toilet, as in you're not having to negotiate as to who empties it. If it's your personal toilet, then you empty it.
Yeah.
And then you've got a decent outside compost system to achieve the final maturation. But of course, a lot of the well-engineered composting systems, emptying it is an odourless experience and very quick and convenient.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but you still get that little bit of it.
Reluctancy.
Do it! Your turn! How do you clean the bowl and stop it from getting stinky, the actual bowl of toilet?
Well, bowls in the world of composting toilets are predominantly the chamber or otherwise the chute that goes into a composting system. Now, cleaning them is, if it's the chute, it's cleaning it as per a normal toilet, and yes, you're allowed to use a little bit of water to wash it all down. That won't affect the performance of the composting system at all. With chamber systems or on-floor systems, you don't have a chute per se. You have a bowl rim, but no bowl, because your bowl is the compost chamber as such. So obviously you don't need to worry about cleaning that. That gets removed and then replaced accordingly.
Yeah, we just have a a eucalyptus sort of spray that we put on the just the surface this on the seat and on the lid and stuff like that. You don't want anything too harsh because you want to risk anything going into the compost and ruining.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So another question that got asked was, if you are travelling, where would you dispose it?
Well, compost material is not suitable to be disposed of in your chemical waste disposal points that may be available around the nation. So what you need to do with your compost materials is store it on your vehicle for the duration that you can get access to a compost bin. Now that compost bin can be on your own property or it can be a friend's property. Obviously when you're putting it into your friend's composting system, you just need to negotiate the deal with them, as in consider that you're giving them a free resource. They may appreciate that. or otherwise you wait until you get back to your own property and then put it into your secondary treatment system.
My suggestion is, as well, if you're travelling all around New Zealand, you could put a call out to the tiny house community on Facebook and ask if anyone would mind if you put your compost in their bin. That's again. Can you put toilet paper in them?
Yes.
Yes, you can. The type of toilet paper could be considered though.
Yes. It couldn't hurt, and there's a range of New Zealand suppliers providing recycled paper toilet tissue now. The advantages you find with recycled paper toilet tissue is that it is easier to break down because the fibres have gone through a secondary process as such. And of course it's a reused material. It can originate from offices, it can originate as newspaper, but essentially it does break down a little bit better in a compost system. But regardless, if you choose to have a luxurious a luxurious toilet paper, it will break down in a compost effectively.
Yeah, and there's some new toilet paper out there, like tree-free toilet paper that's actually made with bamboo fibres and stuff like that. That would go really well in a composting toilet. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and check out Dylan's website on wctnz.co.nz if you want to check out the range of composting toilets he's got. Thanks again. See ya.
See ya.